He left Ruganza before the village finished celebrating. They were still singing when he walked through the gate, still lighting fires, still holding each other, still breathing the specific relief of people who had lived under something terrible for so long they had forgotten what air tasted like without it. He walked through the gate and did not look back. He carried his notebook, he carried his traveling cloak, he carried his worn sandals on his feet, and the storyteller's instinct in his chest said, write everything down. Write it before it becomes something else. Write it before you forget what it felt like to be yourself. He carried one more thing. Strapped across his back, wrapped in cloth, the drum of dawn, the sacred instrument that had ended a king. He did not leave it behind. He would tell himself it was because it was too dangerous to leave. He would tell himself someone needed to keep it safe. He would not tell himself the real reason. Not yet. Not until a healer's daughter in a river town read his notebook without permission and held the truth up to the light and made him look at it. This is the story of what happened after the course ended, or what everyone believed was the ending. He left before the singing stopped. The village of Ruganza was still celebrating behind him. Fire and drums and voices lifted to a sky that had gone clean and gold now. That the blood moon had set, and Jabari walked away from it with his notebook in one hand and the drum of dawn strapped across his back, and the specific feeling of someone who has done something they cannot fully account for. He had been the one to play the drum in the palace. He had been the one standing closest when Zaruko dissolved into the morning light. He had felt the curse leave the king. He had felt it like a pressure change in the air, like the moment before the lightning when everything goes quiet and the world holds its breath. He had felt it, and then he had felt something else. Something small and quiet that had arrived in the seconds after, in the space the curse had left behind, sliding in through the bite wounds on his neck like water finding a crack in old stone. He had not told Mama Nima. He had sat in the courtyard and written in his notebook while the village celebrated, and Mama Nima had come to him with those hawk bright eyes and looked at his neck, and he had seen her face change, and he had said, I'm fine, I need to go, I need to get on the road. And she had looked at him the way people look when they know the truth and have decided not to fight you about it yet. He took the drum because he was afraid of what someone else might do with it. That was the reason he gave himself. He walked fast and did not look back. The road east was long and red and empty in the early hours, and he filled the emptiness with writing. He wrote everything: the palace, the tunnels, the cells, and the bodies drained hollow in the dark, General Kito's face, the feast hall, and the king's eyes catching candlelight from the inside, the drum and the sound it made when he played it, the way the sound was visible, almost rolling across the floor in waves of displaced shadow, Zaruko's final expression and the relief of it, the unbearable human relief on an inhuman face. He wrote it all because writing was how he held things outside him and looked at them. But on the fourth morning, he found something he could not write. He was washing his face at a stream crossing when he looked at his reflection in the water, and his eyes, in the early shadow of the stream bank, away from the direct light, caught the dim morning in a way that eyes do not catch morning light. Amber, faint, brief, gone when he blinked. He sat back from the stream. He looked at his hands, ordinary hands. He pressed them palm down on the red earth of the bank and felt the ground and the cold of the stream water on his skin and the ordinary physical reality of being in a body. Then he picked up his pen and wrote, Day 4. Something is in my eyes that was not there before. I do not know yet what it is. I am writing it down, so if I stop being honest with myself, the notebook will still be honest for me. He closed the notebook and he walked faster. He smelled Soko before he saw it. Not the specific clean smell of a village at the river bend he had half imagined finding, but noise, commerce, the layered smell of 100 fires and 100 different meals and animals and river waters, and the specific energy of a place that never fully goes to sleep because someone is always arriving. Soko was a proper trading town, built at the junction of two major roads and a river crossing. It pulled travelers from every direction, cloth merchants from the coast, grain traders from the highlands, wanderers and storytellers, and people passing through to somewhere else. It had 3 guest houses, 2 market rows, a healer's storehouse near the river, and the comfortable, unsentimental attitude of a place that had seen everything and was surprised by very little. Jabari had arrived road worn and hollow-eyed, and a running fever that had come on in the last half day of walking, his body doing something he did not entirely understand, the cause, and his own immune system conducting negotiations he was not party to. The guest house owner took one look at him and sent a boy to fetch the healer. The healer was busy. His daughter came instead. She arrived at the guest house with a clay medicine box and the unhurried efficiency of someone who has been doing this since she was old enough to carry the box herself. She was 24, dark-skinned, precise, with a healer's hands, always assessing, always doing 2 things at once, and the particular directness of someone who spends their days asking people questions they would rather not answer and has stopped apologizing for it. She looked at Jabari on the low bed, the fever, the road debt, the drum propped against the wall behind him, still wrapped in its cloth, and began walking without ceremony. How long have you had the fever? Half a day, he said, maybe more. How far did you walk today? I don't know. Several hours, he said. Have you eaten? He hesitated. She looked at him. Have you eaten? Not much, he said. What does that mean? It means I haven't been hungry for food, he said. She registered this without making a face about it, which he appreciated. She took his temperature with the back of her wrist, checked his eyes, looked at his neck, and there she paused. Her fingers near but not touching the near invisible marks. What are these from? She asked. A wound, he said. It's healing. It's already healed, she said. This is weeks of healing compressed into... She stopped, looked at him again. Where are you coming from? East, he said, then corrected himself. West, from the west. A pause. Most people who come from the west don't mention it. I know, he said. She held his gaze for a moment. Then she went back to the medicine box. I will make you something for the fever, she said. You need to eat, and you need to tell me the truth about those marks eventually. Not tonight. Tonight you need to sleep. "I don't really sleep," he said. She looked up. "Then rest," she said. "In this room with the door closed. Can you do that?" He looked at the drum against the wall. "Yes," he said. She made tea. She stayed until he drank it. She did not ask about the drum. When she came back in the morning to check on him, he was sitting up with a notebook open on his knee, pen moving. She set new medicine on the table. He said without looking up, "Thank you for last night." "It's what I do," she said. "You didn't have to stay." "You looked like someone who needed a person in the room," she said simply. "I was available." He looked up from the notebook, really looked at her for the first time, without the fog of fever. "I am Jabari," he said. "I know," she said. "The guest house owner told me. He said you collect stories." "I do." "Then you really did come to the right place," she said, moving toward the door. "Soko has more stories than it knows what to do with. Eat something today, real food." "I will try," he said back to her. She gave him a look that said, "Try harder," without using any of those words. Then she left. He looked at the door she had closed behind her, then at his notebook, then at the drum. He wrote. Day 7. Arrived in Soko. Met the healer's daughter. Her name is Safiya. She has honest eyes, and she did not ask about the drum. He paused, then added, "I think she wanted to." For 3 days, Soko was exactly what Jabari needed it to be. Busy, loud, full of strangers who had their own stories and their own business and no interest in his neck or his eyes or the wrapped instrument he carried back to his room every evening. He sat in the market and wrote. He walked the river path in the morning when the light was clean. He ate more than he had in a week because Safiya checked on him daily, and her check-in had a way of making him want to report progress. She brought him to the market on the second day and introduced him to 3 of the oldest traders who had been passing through Soko for 40 years. He spent 4 hours with them and filled 12 pages and came back to the guest house feeling more like himself than he had since the palace courtyard. Safiya was at the storehouse door when he returned. "You look better," she said. "I feel better," he said, and meant it. "The traders took your year off." "They took my 2 years off and started on a 3rd, he said. She laughed. He arrived suddenly and was gone before he was ready. He filed it away with the careful attention he gave to things he did not want to lose. That evening, they walked the river together. Not by arrangement, just both of them at the river path. At the same time, falling into step naturally the way 2 people do when they have already decided they like walking at the same pace as each other. They talked about stories, about what makes a story survive across generations and what makes it die. Safiya had theories, healer's theories, built on pattern and cause and effect that were different from Jabari's storyteller's theories. The friction between them was interesting. A story survives, she said, when it tells the truth about something people feel but cannot say. A story survives, he said, when someone loves it enough to keep telling it. Those are the same thing, she said. He thought about it. Maybe. She smiled at the river. He looked at the river, so he had somewhere to put his eyes. On the 3rd day, everything changed. He heard about it at the market. A cloth merchant from the highlands, a man named Dessa, who had been passing through Soko on a regular route for years, known to the store owners, reliable as the seasons, had not appeared for the morning trade. His pack was still at the guest house. His goods were still laid out from the day before, covered for the night. Just the man gone. Jabari heard the traders discussing it and felt something move in his chest that was not quite fear and not quite recognition, but somewhere in the specific geography between them. He walked back to the guest house, sat on his bed, put the drum within reach. He opened his notebook and turned back to the previous night's entry. He had written, as he has always did, a record of the day, the river walk, the conversations about stories surviving, the way Safiya smiled at the water. Then, at the bottom of the page, in handwriting slightly different from the rest, slightly less careful, the letters larger and pressed harder into the page as if written in a different state of mind. The road, dark. Someone on the road. I don't. It ended there. He did not remember writing it. He sat with the notebook open in his hands for a very long time. Then he turned to a fresh page and wrote, "A merchant named Dessa has disappeared from Soko overnight. His belongings are still here. I do not know if I am responsible. I have a record below of something I wrote last night that I have no memory of writing. I am documenting this because the notebook must stay honest even when I cannot." He closed the notebook. He did not tell Safiya. He told himself he needed more information before he said anything to anyone. That was the first lie. They were not dreams, exactly. Dreams have a logic of their own. However strange, they have geography. However shifting, a dreamer who exists within them even when they cannot control what happens. What came to Jabari in the hours before dawn was different. It was more like memory. Dark road, red death pale in the moonlight, the smell of someone's fire dying out, the sound of his own breathing, slower than it should have been, slower and more deliberate, the breathing of someone patient, footsteps in the dust ahead, someone walking alone unaware, the hunger, full and certain and unignorable. He would wake or surface because he was never entirely sure he had been asleep, sitting upright in his room with the taste of something metallic at the back of his throat, and his hands gripping the edge of the sleeping mat with a force that left marks in the woven grass. He wrote everything down. Every night in the hours after, he wrote what he could remember with the scrupulous honesty of a man documenting a disease he might be carrying. The road, the footsteps, the hunger, what came after, and here the memory went dark and fragmented. Images without sequence, nothing he could confirm, nothing he could deny. He wrote, "I do not know if these are real. I do not know if they are the course showing me what I have done, or the course showing me what he wants me to do. I cannot tell the difference, and that inability frightens me more than either option." He wrote, "I am afraid to sleep. I am afraid not to sleep. I am more afraid of what I might be doing in the hours I cannot account for." He did not tell Safiya. He told himself he would tell her when he was sure he was already sure. That was the second lie. Over the next 6 days, 3 more travelers disappeared from Soko. A young trader from the coast, a woman traveling with her brother. She vanished. He remained, unable to explain what he had heard in the night or why he had not gone to check. An elderly map maker who had been staying at the second guest house and who was found to have paid his bill in full before vanishing, as though he had intended to leave, but his maps were still rolled and stacked against the wall of his room. Soko began to change, not the way Ruganza had changed, not with the practiced resignation of a village that had lived under darkness for generations. Soko changed the way a busy place changes when something it cannot explain begins to hollow out its confidence. The market stayed open, but people moved through it differently, faster, less settled, eyes going to the road more often. The guest houses reported fewer new arrivals. The traders who had been in Soko for weeks began talking about moving on. Jabari watched all of it and wrote all of it and said nothing. His notebook filled with evidence. The dreams continued. The metallic taste in the mornings, the handwritings at the bottom of pages that he did not remember producing. Increasingly detailed, increasingly specific. The words of someone who was no longer entirely in control of the hand holding the pen. He wrote, 4 disappearances, all strangers, all traveling alone, all at night. The pattern is identical to Ruganza. I know what this pattern means. I knew what it meant after the first one, and I said nothing. And 3 more people are gone, and their absence is in me like a stone I cannot put down. He wrote, I am what I feared I was becoming. I think I have been this for longer than I admitted. He wrote, I don't know how to tell her. I don't know how to say it. I have written it in this notebook 30 times in 30 different ways, and I cannot find the version that makes it bearable. He wrote, she will find it here eventually. She read it here. Maybe that is what the notebook is for. Maybe I have been writing it for her to find. He was still writing this when Safiya came to the guest house to check on him. He had missed their morning walk, which he never did, and found the door unlocked and the room empty and the notebook open on the sleeping mat. She told herself she only picked it up to set it aside. That was the lie she gave herself for 3 seconds between picking it up and beginning to read. She read for a long time. She read from the beginning. The road east, Ruganza, the fever, the stream where his eyes had caught the dim light wrong. She read about the palace and the king and the tunnels and the drum. She read how the drum worked. Displaced, not destroyed. The course, moving from host to host. Written with the precise compulsive detail of a man documenting something he needed to understand, but was afraid to look at directly for a long time. She read about the first disappearance, Dessa, the entry below the river walk, in the changed handwriting, the road, dark, someone on the road. She read all 4 disappearances, the dreams, the metallic taste, the growing certainty. She read, I think I have been this for longer than I admitted. She read also, she will find it here eventually. She will read it here. Maybe that is what the notebook is for. She sat with the notebook in her lap for a long time after she finished. Then she set it back on the sleeping mat exactly as she had found it. She went to the storehouse. She looked at the drum where Jabari kept it propped against the wall. She had known it was significant since the first night. The way he positioned himself near it, even when sick. The way his eyes went to it when his mind went somewhere she could not follow. She had not asked because she had understood somehow that it would tell her what it needed to tell her when the time came. She picked it up, still wrapped, unwrapped the top enough to see the wood, the drum head, the age of it. She wrapped it back. She sat in the storehouse and waited for Jabari to come back. On the day of the blood moon, he came back at midday. She heard him before she saw him. His steps on the storehouse path, slightly uneven in a way she had started noticing in the last week, as though some part of him was always slightly off balance, compensating for something internal that kept shifting. She was shifting on the low stool with her hands in her lap and the notebook on the table between them and the drum beside the notebook. He stepped through the door. He saw the notebook. He saw her face. He stopped. The silence between them was the specific silence of 2 people who have arrived at the same truth from different directions and are now standing on either side of it. How much? He said finally. All of it, she said. He looked at the notebook, at the drum, at her face. He did not apologize, and she did not want him to. Apology was too small a thing for what the notebook contained, and they both knew it. Before people disappeared, she said, "Was it you?" "I don't know," he said. The most honest thing he had said in 6 days. "I think so. I can't." He stopped. "I can't account for the hours, and the pattern is the same as Ruganza. And He stopped again. "And you knew after the first one," she said. It was not a question. Yes, he said. She held his gaze. Her face was doing something complex. Not anger exactly, though anger was in it. Not fear, though that was in it too. Something larger than both. The expression of someone who is holding a great deal and choosing very carefully what to do with it. You wrote that the drum displaces the cause, she said. That he moves it from host to host. Yes. And you wrote that if the host dies at the moment of displacement, with no other living host present. Safiya! Is that true? She said. What you wrote. Is it accurate? It is what Mama Niman's letter said. Yes. Then we have to. No. His voice came out wrong. Too sharp. Too fast. With a resonance underneath it that was not his usual voice. He heard it himself. Stopped. They both heard it. The hunger in his voice. For the first time, audible. Outside, the light was changing. The blood moon would rise at sunset. The afternoon moved like something struggling. Jabari sat on one side of the storehouse. Safiya sat on the other. The drum on the table between them, like a third person neither of them wanted to address directly. They talked, not about the plan, about everything else, about the stories the old traders had told him, about our grandmother and the generations of healers, about the river, about what it looked like at dawn, and whether the specific quality of river-drawn lights was different in every settlement, or whether all rivers at dawn were fundamentally the same. They talked the way people talk when they are making something last because they know it is going to end. The lights reddened as the afternoon aged. The blood moon crested the eastern tree line at sunset, and the storehouse window went deep crimson, and Jabari looked at his hands in the red light and watched them change. It was not dramatic. It was not the violent transformations he had witnessed in Zaruko. Battling of forms, the monstrous and the human fighting for the face. This was quieter, a settling, like something that had been waiting for permission, finally being given it. His eyes in the red lights from the window burned full amber. He looked at Safiya. She looked back at him. The drum, she said, quietly, calmly. Don't, he said. His voice had this resonance. Fully now, deep and layered, two voices in one. Jabari, don't. He moved before either of them understood he was going to. Not across the room, between her and the drum. The hunger driving something tactical and cold underneath the remaining surface of him. He put himself between Safiya and the drum of dawn, with specific instinct of a thing that understood its own vulnerability. I need you to leave, he said. Right now, go out the door and don't come back tonight. Go far from here. Take people with you. I'm not leaving you, she said. Safiya. His voice cracked on her name. Something is fighting to get out. The real Jabari, underneath, using everything he had to get one clear sentence through. I'm not going to be able to hold this much longer. Please go. And then what? She said. You stay here and the town loses more people tonight? More strangers? More families who don't know yet what happened to someone they loved? He had no answer, because there was no answer that was also true. She took one step toward the drum. He moved without deciding to move. His hands closed around her arm and moved her back, harder than he would ever have chosen to. The strength in his grip, not his own strength anymore. The curse using the body it had borrowed. She hit the storehouse wall, and the breath left her in a sharp sound that cut through him, even underneath the hunger. She slid down the wall. He stood in the center of the room and looked at what he had done. The amber eyes, the wrong breathing, the hand that had done that to her, to Safiya, the person who had come to a guest house with a medicine box when he was sick, who had walked the river with him, who had read every word he had written and not run. Something inside him broke through. Safiya, his voice, his real voice, wrecked and raw. Safiya, I am sorry. She was moving, not away from him, toward the table. She was bleeding at the temple where her head had hit the wall, bright red against her dark skin, running down the side of her face and dropping onto the storehouse floor. One arm not working properly, moving on the other three, moving toward the drum. He moved to stop her, and the hunger surged, and his vision went red amber, and he could not separate himself from it anymore. Could not find the line between Jabari and the thing wearing him. Her hand reached the table leg. She pulled up herself, one hand on the table, the drum within reach, her breath coming in sharp, damaged increments, blood on her face and her hands and the floor beneath her. He was across the room. She grabbed the drum. He reached her the same instant her hand came down on the drum head. The sound hit the storehouse like a wall collapsing inward. Not loud, but total. The same deep, sub-hearing resonance that had rolled across the palace floor when he played it. That the body understood before the ears did. That moved through wood and stone and bone and did not ask permission. He felt it hit him like cold water from a great height, like the floor dropping away, like every borrowed thing being recalled at once. The strength, the amber eyes, the hunger's cold certainty, the two voices in his throat, everything the forest spirit had lent to Zaruko 2 centuries ago and that had traveled from Zaruko to him in the courtyard at dawn, recalled now, pulled back, displaced. He dropped to his knees. The amber light rose in his eyes, bright, brighter, full, unbearable, and then went out like a candle in a closed room. He pitched forward. The storehouse floor caught him. Silence. The drum rolled off the table and landed on the floor beside him. Safiya stood at the table with one hand on its surface and the blood still running freely down the side of her face, and her breath still coming in those careful damaged increments. She stood that way for a moment. Then her legs gave and she went down slowly, not falling, just descending, as though her body was finally allowed to stop pretending it could not manage. She sat on the storehouse floor with her back against the table and her legs out in front of her and Jabari's still form beside her. She put her hand on his chest, felt it rise, fall, rise. She tipped her head back against the table's edge and looked at the ceiling of the storehouse she had walked in her whole life and let the breath come however it needed to come. The blood moon's light came through the window and lay across the floor in a long red rectangle that reached almost to where she sat. She did not move out of it. Outside, Soko was beginning to stir. Voices, footsteps, the sound of people moving toward the storehouse, drawn by the drum sound, which had been felt rather than heard, and had brought people out of their homes and off their sleeping mats with the instinct of something recognized from the oldest parts of themselves. She could hear them getting closer. She looked at Jabari's face. His expression, even now, even on the storehouse floor, was the one she had read about in the notebook, the one he had written about 3 times, trying to find the right words for Zaruko's final face. She understood now why 3 attempts hadn't been enough. It was relief, but not simple relief. It was the specific relief of someone who had been carrying something they never chose to carry, in a body they could not fully trust, for days that felt like centuries, and had finally been allowed to set it down. He reached out and touched his face once. The voices outside were at the storehouse door. She looked at the door. She looked at the drum on the floor. She looked at the blood moon's red light stretching across the storehouse floor toward her like a hand reaching. She opened her mouth to call out to the people at the door and found in the end that she did not need to. The door opened, the lights came in, and after that, the notebook tells the rest. They found the notebook first, open on the storehouse table. Every page filled, from the road east of Ruganza to the last entry, written that afternoon in handwriting that was careful and deliberate, and cost something to produce. If you are reading this, and I am not able to explain it myself, the drum is what is needed to end it. The drum and someone brave enough to reach it. Write her name down. Make sure her name survives. That is all I ask. They found the drum on the floor. They found him breathing. They found her sitting with her back against the table in the blood moon's red light. And here the accounts differ. Some of the people who came through that door said she looked at them when they entered, said she was conscious, said she tried to speak. Others said she was very still, said the blood on her face had stopped moving, said the storehouse was so quiet when they came through the door that they stopped in the threshold without knowing why and stood there and could not immediately speak. What everyone agrees on, the drum was silent, the blood moon was rising, and in the storehouse at the river's edge, in the trading town of Soko, something had changed. Whether it ended cleanly, whether it ended completely, whether the woman who reached the drum with the blood on her hands and her face and her last remaining strength, whether she saw the morning, the notebook does not say. Notebooks record what the writer knows, and the writer was on the floor. What the town of Soko remembers, the drum sound that woke them, the door they opened, the red light, the stillness, and above the storehouse door, in the days after, hung by whose hand no one could say, the drum of dawn, hanging where everyone could see it, where it could not be forgotten, where it would ask its questions every morning to everyone who passed beneath it. Do you know what this cost? Do you know what someone paid so that you could walk this road and not be afraid of the dark? The drum does not answer. It just hangs there, asking.